My name is Len from Dorcas.
Hello. We've heard from you before today.
Yes, one of my colleagues.
Okay, great, good. I just wanted you to know I remember you.
Yes,
I know you.
Thank you.
Show me you know me.
I think we've clearly seen that over the last, say, 20 years, the number of organizations who do fundraising has really increased.
Yes.
Now, I like it that we approach people really friendly, customer-oriented. But if everybody would do it, what is the effect? I like it if I approach...
I think you've put your finger on one of the great conundrums that we have yet to address. Because of what you said at the beginning is absolutely true. There are more and more organizations who go after fundraising, even though it gets more and more difficult because of the financial returns that I mentioned, because fundraising is a very good way for a not-for-profit organization to raise money to make a difference. But the thing that hasn't grown commensurate is the pool of donors. That hasn't grown commensurately. And so more people chasing more donations means that individually donors are getting more communications, and many of them are not liking it. Now, we should be able to sweeten that pill because, and I'm not sure how this applies in the Netherlands or in Europe, the rest of Europe generally, but in the UK, we are predicting that our prime donor age people, 55 plus, is going to grow from, I think it's from 9 million, that segment, which is where most of the people with disposable income and the inclination to be donors come from. That 9.5 million is going to be growing to 14.5 million by 2030. Our demographics are people are living longer, which should be great news for fundraisers. It's why in 2015, before the Olive Cook story, I was writing about a golden age of fundraising. And I started, and I'm going to end, and I'm certainly going to talk a bit tomorrow about the disappearing golden age of fundraising, because for me it was the demographic change in the number of donors was going to lead to a golden age of fundraising. The fact that we were getting much better at retention, keeping people for longer, which is just a cheap form of acquisition. Keeping people longer is just a cheap form of acquisition. That's the second thing that will lead to a golden age in fundraising. And the third thing is corporate social engagement. I don't use the term corporate social responsibility because I don't believe it's about them giving and us taking. I talk about partnerships, which are win-win partnerships between corporates and charities, where the charity can bring a whole lot of things that corporate wants to deliver satisfaction for employees, the empathy and the rapport that I was talking about, and so on. So I would like to think that the antidote to the problem that you've hit upon is that we will realize a genuine golden age of fundraising, and that people, as the population expands, we will get better at sending them what they want to receive, not what we want them to have. But it's going to require us to work together. And I was quite surprised with the results of the survey, which indicated that that wasn't really seen as a priority, the fact that our sector doesn't work together. Can I just digress a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about Amazon. Do you have Amazon in the Netherlands? Yeah. Do they pay tax here?
Well, not much.
You know, before I was a fundraiser, I worked in the book trade, publishing. And the retail book trade was characterized until very recently in the UK by small organizations who underinvested, who didn't talk to each other, who didn't have the technology, who didn't do things properly, who had no central national voice. And then along comes Amazon, who are American, who don't pay their taxes, who nobody really likes, And yet they completely stole the UK book trade. What characterizes the UK book trade now is that it's almost non-existent because Amazon stole all of our customers, and they did it by providing brilliant customer service. And so I think we need to get wise to this problem, and we need to get together. I mean, Amazon did it. I think Amazon spent 14 years before they turned a profit in Europe. It was huge. It was a very long period, maybe 6 years, I don't know, but it was a very long period of time. But the point is that we could never, ever compete with that because we don't work together. We don't have a united voice. We just refuse to cooperate. And I think that needs to change. I honestly do. And I'm going to talk about that in my last session, actually. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think still hanging over us, because since that golden age of fundraising theory that I had, along came Olive Cook, and suddenly charities were decades back in terms of public trust and accountability. That trust and accountability is being rebuilt now, and it can be rebuilt. People want to like us. They want to support our organizations and what they do. But we need to get it to be a pleasure for them as it is a pleasure for us when they help us. It's got to be a pleasure for them. And if we get that bit right, I think key to getting that right will be to make sure that nobody is getting an unacceptable barrage of appeals from charities. And that will require us to cooperate, to find new ways to cooperate. Does that make sense? Because I just made it up. But no, I didn't. I mean, I genuinely believe that. But it's really important. I think you've hit on a really important question.
So yeah, I'm a member of the Belgian team.
Good for you.
It's just to say this. We launched 10 years ago, the four of us, we launched a campaign, Testament.be, testament.be, and it's a group campaign. We were at, I think, 20 organizations. Now it's 120. And what I mean is, it's only one communication.
Did you say DE? Is this Germany as well as?
No, it's BE.
Oh, BE. Sorry.
BE. Yeah, it's in Brussels.
Because I know there is something similar in Germany, but go on.
Yes, and so it's a group campaign.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I mean is, it's one voice. I mean, it's one message, and not 120 messages, and not 120 campaigns. So it's a big campaign: television, radio, newspaper, online, Testament Fair. We have invited, no, not inventé. What do you say, inventé? We have created that, the Testament Fair. And right. So the public sees one communication and not 120. I mean, the big one, of course, all the organizations who are with us, like, the big ones, and but it's only one message. I mean, and we are together. And the expert, they say, yes, but it's about legacies and fundraising.
So only legacies.
Yeah, and they will say fundraising on donor is not the same. But if you think about it more than 10 minutes, it's the same. It's the same
I'm
thing.
Totally with you.
You ask money.
But why this would be only legacies? In the UK, there is also a similar legacy
Remember
campaign.
a charity. Oh, no.
You remember a charity.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If it works for legacies, it would work for all sorts of things. I mean, there is evidence of increasing cooperation, but it's not resourced properly, and it's not driven properly. But I think that's a very good example to say, look, we can do it for legacies. Why don't we do it for? So that's the answer to the question that you were saying. Why can't we do it for direct mail? Very good point.
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you again for the answers. Did I see other hands raised? Yeah.
There might be somebody way up at the
It's
back.
sometimes. Thank you for waving, because
Yeah,
it's really
because we
difficult to
can't
see
see.
with the lights in our
I
eyes.
see you now.
And I think there are two questions right there on the back, Reinier, if I understand properly. Is that correct? Yes, please.
Hello, this is Willemijn from SOS Children's Villages. I have a question. I'm head of communications, and there are not a lot here in the room, which is a shame, I think. I think we have a discussion in the office, like when you have €1 and you have to invest it in acquisition of new donors, would you do it via face-to-face or via brand awareness campaigns?
If I had €1, I would go and buy myself half a cup of coffee.
A coffee.
And I would think about the answer.
No, but it's, investing in brand awareness, or do you invest in real direct...
Like brand awareness, I mean, the other thing you could have done is that you could have thrown it in the canal, which is actually quite fun. Sometimes if you throw them at the right angle, they will bounce. Brand awareness, how can you bank brand awareness? No, I would invest it in something that might get a return. You have to have a lot of money to create brand awareness. And for most not-for-profits, it's like throwing a cornflake at a battleship. You are not going to have enough to create an impact. So if you have a small amount of money, and it would have to be a bit more than €1, at least €1.50, and you had to focus it and make sure, but there are ways that you can get returns in small markets, but this is why you focus on direct marketing. But these awareness campaigns, which are generally sold to you by sort of head-in-the-cloud advertising agency types who do presentations with, fancy graphics and charts and diagrams, but actually haven't ever raised any money in their lives. Okay. I used to run an agency, and we employed people who thought like that. I don't know if that really answers your question adequately.
Well, I can imagine it might bring in some discussions, but we only have time for one more question, and there was already a hand up right at the right-hand corner.
Excuse me. Alcielles, KWF. What's not totally clear to me is there a share of wallet? We talk about cooperating.
Share of wallet, yeah, good question. So do you mean is it a finite pool of money?
Yes.
I think we talk a lot about things like donor fatigue. And when you look at donor fatigue, it is generally fundraiser fatigue that's just repackaged as something that comes from the donors. My experience is that donors, there is an infinite capacity for the good works that we do. If you give people a good reason to support your cause, they will find the money to do it. Most people, relative to the rest of their disposable income, what they spend on charitable causes is generally quite low. Somehow we've not succeeded, either in Europe or North America or Australia, we've not succeeded in expanding the cake, but I don't believe there is a finite share of wallet. I just don't. I think it's up to our imagination and creativity and passion and the power of our storytelling, and if we present it, rather like Etta McLeod did on that ship, she just created an environment in which people wanted to support her, and she told the kind of stories that made it very easy for people to feel that great because they had done what they were doing. I doubt if anybody on that boat set out to support two causes for people suffering terminal cancer. But she was able to show them that this was something that they could they could give to. And I think that's what we have to do. And sorry, somebody you, up at the back, you said that you're not that many communications people were here. I mean, I think fundraising is all about communication. We are communications people by definition. The only trouble is we don't necessarily teach people the skills of good, effective communication. But, you know, to me, that's the answer to increasing our share of wallet. The charities who do fundraising well are really prospering, even now. Quite a lot of charities are not prospering, but the charities who do it well, those who are great at fundraising, are doing well at the moment. And if I'm honest, that's been my experience over most of my working life.
So do you mean that we need competition? We talked about...
I don't think competition is a bad thing. But I just think the capacity for human generosity is infinite. I'm on the board of the Disasters Emergency Committee. We're a coalition of the leading British aid agencies that comes together in times of disaster. We've just launched an appeal for Myanmar, for the Rohingya people. We do it in the face of an extraordinary catalogue of catastrophes, from terror attacks, from cyclones, from shootings, and all of that. And always amongst our number, there is somebody who says, will one disaster cancel the other disaster out? And that used to be the thinking in our sector, and it's not true. And we saw that at the time of the Ethiopian emergency in the 1980s was the time when the Bhopal tragedy happened in India. And that was one of the most successful appeals I've ever been involved in. And it came at the end when the public was actually had a right to feel fatigued over what they'd been hearing about what was going on in Ethiopia, but they didn't. They responded hugely generously. And every appeal that I've worked on that has been done properly has shown that to be the case. I have infinite faith in donors' generosity.
Thank you.
I think that's a beautiful closure of this part. I want to thank you for your question. Ken, thank you very much for being flexible. And
I thought that was well worth. I'm glad I finished
definitely,
early.
Definitely.
Really
so it's time for our coffee and tea break. Thanks to Mindwise. Hope to see you back here in 25 minutes from now. Please enjoy.